Hi there. Well, this is our second session, so session 1.2, where we talk about medicine and religion, or religion and medicine. So let's go ahead and get our PowerPoint going here. So, by way of introduction, let's talk a little bit about a definition of medicine. And it's really about just having a working definition, right? So, broadly speaking, medicine is a big field. It encompasses everything from presenting or restoring health, treating disease or illness, or treating the ability of physical health, and we can do that by way of using pharmacology, drugs, surgical procedures. Now that came along kind of later in history, or by physical manipulation, such as manipulating joints back in place, physical therapy. All of that is subsumed under this idea, the big umbrella of medicine, right? And then this idea of healing in general, or religious healing, always just has this element of a higher power. So this is more than just, miracles, miraculous healing. It just any time that you seek in the secular sense the help of divine beings or divine powers, or in the biblical sense, anytime that the Lord God Creator is involved, it's divine power that is higher than just the normal course of nature. Okay, so science and religion, we typically see three different approaches, and sometimes you see different words used here, right? So essentialism is pretty much an expression of existentialism. That's the view that wherever you are in history or today, or wherever you are in the world, wherever you are, that's the reality that you're in. And so we don't really need to work a whole lot about the social setting or the cultural setting. Whatever reality you're in, that's the parameters you use. So that's why we see this idea, the view that an idea or a discipline basically transverses through all ages, but is the same. Presentism often has this idea of realism with it. It understands the past, but uses this realistic approach by looking at it through a modern lens, modern definitions. Contextualism, which we often use when we look at critical biblical studies, is this idea that, including when we look at medical ideas and practices, that they're shaped by their socio-cultural context. So if we're in the Old Testament, we look at the Mesopotamian context or the Egyptian context. When we're in the New Testament, we look at the Greco-Roman context. If you're in missions and you're in Cambodia, you look at the Cambodian context, and so forth. And so my encouragement is that when you are looking for articles or when you're on social media posts and you want to include that into your ebook, into your journal, that when you use materials from people in discussions such as these, that you ask yourself, from what perspective, right, is this person writing? Is this person kind of just like viewing it from wherever the person is at? Or is this person describing what happened in the past with modern terminology? Or is this person giving room for whatever socially and culturally was going on at the time, or globally is happening in a different locale? Okay, so I want you to be aware of the glasses that people wear when they are discussing matters. This is a 4,000 level course, and I need you to think critically and be able to use terminology for it. Are we dealing with essentialism? Are we dealing with presentism? And are we dealing with contextualism? And on a quiz, I need you to be able to match these terminology, these terms with the definitions. All right. So when we talk about religion and medicine, people in general have had some different ways in which they relate to two. Some of it has been historically, some of it has been opinion wise, there are four broad categories, right? One of them has been where religion is the umbrella under which everything is put, and so religion becomes the litmus test. So medicine or science then is always subjected to religion. Medicine is assumed under religion. Another approach is where you kind of sort of separate them. You say like, well, this is science and this is religion, and they touch in some areas. We can see how religion gives some way for science and how science has some room for religion, but we also see how they're kind of sort of different, right? Another one would be where you completely separate them. They're completely in different boxes. And some people say that especially comes around during the Enlightenment, where people say like, well, religious people are just underdeveloped. They don't think rationally. And other people would say, well, people who believe in science, they're just godless. They have no faith. They're just completely secular. And so we see this like, and they said there's nothing in common, right? And there's like no reaching across the aisle there. And then, of course, there is the inversion of number one, where religion is completely subsumed under medicine, where science has the final say. If something doesn't pass the smell test of current science, then religion is dismissed. And I was trained originally in the sciences, and I must caution you that there's a religious element to everything. That I am old enough that when I was trained in the sciences, I had 8 years of physics, that black holes and big bangs weren't a thing yet. We had the steady state theory. You'll have to Google that. I'm that old. And at that time, if you didn't believe in that, you were just not scientific. And now if you don't believe in some sort of black hole or big bang, you're not scientific. So even there's always a development of the sciences. We're always in flux, right? All right. So looking a little bit closer at this, you can see how number one would be that in terms of healing, that disease under the number one would always be seen through a religious lens. And that also means that the agency, like people who are responsible for that, would have been given to religious people. So then you don't trust physicians necessarily. And we'll see that in the Old Testament, that physicians were often distrusted. And so in certain cultures, you still have that, where you have healing sects. That we still have a lot of cultures where, and you will read about that, where medical people just have a hard time getting a footing because they are just mistrusted. This partial separation came about when we first started to have medical writings coming in. So that was helpful. We started to understand disease naturally. We get some empirical medicine, and so this is at the precipice, at the transition, where we see some medicine develop in Greece or in Europe, and you see some Judeo-Christian values on the side there as well. And then, of course, past the Enlightenment, like I was talking about, you get religion and medicine compartmentalized. But in pluralistic societies today, it's very polarizing. And so it's either one or the other. Do you want a chaplain to come to your bedside? But that's very separate from the doctors. And so it becomes polarizing. So with very critical ethical issues, it's kind of hard to have a critical conversation going. Matters of abortion, euthanasia, assisted suicide, those are really, really delicate. And then the inverse, religion subsumed under medicine. You start seeing that actually some room is developing here where we get some therapeutic approaches, some somatic approaches that are more comfortable with how the body responds to religious, what shall we say, rhythms and all that. And so we're more comfortable now with mental health issues and social well-being as part of spiritual well-being. So it's very interesting how that works. There is a school of thought that's more anthropological that separates this idea of disease and illness. So that's your John Pilt's article. They would say that we use different words for this, where disease is really reserved for, shall we say, sickness. So a biomedical malfunction that afflicts an organism. So an animal can be sick, a plant can be sick, a human being can be sick. But where illness is really a word reserved for social networks that have been disrupted and meaning of life that has been disrupted and lost because there is a disvalued state of being, often as a result of being sick, as a result of disease. And we will talk a little bit more about that. But you can see then that this offers questions like, so when Jesus heals a person, what is being healed? Is a disease being healed? Or is an illness being healed? Are both being healed? And today, what do people value most? A disease being healed? An illness being healed? Do we see examples around us where people are deemed ill? Like we squish them out of society. The people are less than. So just some thoughts there, and we will come back to that later in the course. All right. So let's see what else we can get into this week.